My name is Maya, and I am 32 years old. For 10 years, my sister and my mother let everyone in our circle believe I was a college dropout and a financial burden who couldn't even keep a job at a grocery store. They didn't know I was actually one of the highest paid cardiothoracic surgeons in the state of Georgia, or that I'd been secretly buying up every asset they owned just to wait for the day I could take it all back. Before I tell you how I walked into that operating room and watched my sister realize I held her life in my hands, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing my sisters from London to Atlanta tuning in. And honey, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you most. We aren't being the bigger person anymore, we're being the smarter person. Now, let me set the scene for you, because you really won't believe the level of audacity I had to deal with last Tuesday. It was a Tuesday in Buckhead, and if you know anything about Atlanta, you know that Tuesday at Le Bilboquet is where all the who's who go to see and be seen. I'm talking about women carrying $2,500 Bottega Veneta bags and men wearing $600 Tom Ford loafers without socks. The air smells like expensive perfume and white wine, and everyone is trying to look like they have $1 million in the bank, even if their car note is 3 months behind. I was sitting at a corner table, tucked away, wearing a plain gray sweater I bought from Target for $22.99 and some simple black slacks. I looked like a ghost. I looked like someone's tired assistant, and that's exactly how I wanted it. To my mother and my sister, I was just poor Maya, the one who stayed home to help Big Mama while they went out to build their brands. My sister Alexis was sitting right across from me, and let me tell you, she was doing the absolute most. She was wearing a dress that I know for a fact cost $1,200 because I saw the charge on the secondary credit card I keep for family emergencies that she thinks is a gift from our mother. She had her hair laid in a 40-inch install that probably cost her $850, and she was waving her hand around like she was the Queen of Sheba. So Alexis said, loud enough for the tables next to us to hear. She was looking at her two friends, Crystal and Tasha, who were nodding along to every word like professional bobbleheads. I just signed the papers for the new boutique in Phipps Plaza. It's a huge move, 6 figures just for the build-out. My mentor says I'm the next big thing in Atlanta fashion. Crystal gasped, clutching her chest. 6 figures? Alexis, you are really that girl. I don't know how you do it all. Alexis cut her eyes toward me, and that's when the disrespect started. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Well, Alexis sighed, picking up her glass of champagne that cost $28 a pour. It's hard when you're the only one in the family with ambition. I have to carry the weight for everyone. I even had to get Maya a little job at the hospital where I do my volunteer work. She's a tech. She mostly just moves boxes and, handles the messy stuff so the real doctors can work. I didn't blink. I didn't even look up from my salad. I just took a sip of my sparkling water and stayed in my gray rock zone. I've learned that when you're dealing with a narcissist, your silence is a vacuum that sucks the air right out of their lungs. But Alexis wasn't done. It's okay, though, Alexis continued, her voice dripping with that fake sweet honey. Maya doesn't mind. She was never really the academic type anyway. After she dropped out of school 10 years ago, we just realized she was better suited for manual labor. Right, Maya? Bless your heart, you look so tired. Did you have to empty a lot of bedpans today? Tasha giggled behind her hand. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't let it reach my face. I thought about the Patek Philippe rose gold watch sitting in my safe at home, a watch that cost $48,200. I thought about the fact that I'd just finished a 12-hour shift where I literally repaired a human heart with my own 2 hands. And I thought about the Johns Hopkins acceptance letter that Alexis shredded 10 years ago while I was at Sunday dinner at Big Mama's house. She thought she destroyed my future that day. She thought that by shredding that paper she could stop me from becoming who I was meant to be. But all she did was teach me how to move in the dark. "I'm doing just fine, Alexis," I said, my voice as smooth as silk. "The hospital is a busy place. You'd be surprised at what you see when people think you aren't worth noticing." "I bet," Alexis laughed, turning back to her friends. "Anyway, I need to order another bottle. This brand deal I just got from that skincare line is paying me $15,000 just for 3 posts. I think we should celebrate." Now, I knew for a fact that the brand deal was actually a $300 credit for some cheap lotions made in a warehouse in New Jersey. I know this because I own a silent stake in the marketing agency she's been pitching to. The math wasn't mathing, and the lie was getting bigger by the second. Alexis signaled the waiter, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Bring us the Grand Dame, 2 bottles, and put it on my tab." The waiter hesitated. "The Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame, ma'am? That will be $595 per bottle." Alexis didn't even flinch. She just waved him away with her left hand, making sure her Cartier love bracelet caught the light. I could see the slight discoloration on the inside of the metal. It was a fake, a $200 dupe she bought off a website to keep up appearances. "Money is no object when you're winning," Alexis said, looking directly at me. "Maybe one day you'll understand what it's like to not have to check your bank balance before you order an appetizer, Maya. But until then, don't worry, Big Sis has you covered." She thought she was embarrassing me. She thought she was showing her friends that I was the bum sister. But as I watched her laugh and flex that fake gold on her wrist, I realized something. The trap was already set. She was so busy looking at the squad at the table that she didn't see the creditors I'd been quietly talking to. She didn't see the forensic accountant I hired to look into how she'd been using our mother's name to open lines of credit. And she definitely didn't see the black SUV parked outside with the tinted windows, waiting to take me back to my penthouse in Buckhead, the one that sits on the 40th floor and costs $9,800 a month in HOA fees alone. "I'm sure you do have it all covered, Alexis," I said, finally looking her dead in the eye. I gave her a small, tight smile, the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before it decides it's time to play. "You always were so good at making things appear out of thin air." The waiter returned with the champagne, the bubbles hissing in the glass like a warning. Alexis took a deep gulp, her eyes sparking with the kind of arrogance that only comes from someone who thinks they've truly gotten away with it. She thought she'd won. She thought the gray rock was just a stone she could kick around whenever she felt like feeling powerful. But she forgot one small thing. I wasn't just the sister who watched her shred my dreams. I was the one who learned how to put them back together, piece by piece, until I had a map of her entire downfall. He thought he'd won the night, but as the waiter walked away, I saw him glance back at our table with a look of pure confusion. He'd seen my face before. He just couldn't remember where. And as for that bill, oh, it was coming, but it wasn't just for the champagne. Now, y'all won't believe how we got to this point, but to understand the ice in my veins at that dinner table, we have to go back. We have to go back 10 years to the day the golden child decided that my light was making her look a little too dim. It was a Sunday, and in our family, Sunday meant one thing: Big Mama's house in Cascade. The air in that kitchen was thick enough to eat, smelling like slow-cooked collard greens with smoked turkey, 5-cheese macaroni that had that perfect burnt crust on the edges, and Big Mama's famous 2-layer lemon pound cake. This wasn't just a meal, it was a ritual. We'd just come from service at Elizabeth Baptist, and everyone was still in their Sunday best. My mother, Brenda, was fanning herself with a church fan that had a picture of a serene-looking Martin Luther King Jr. on it, wearing a hat that probably cost $275.50 from a boutique in Decatur. I was 22, glowing because I just finished my undergrad at Spelman with honors. I had a secret in my purse, a thick, cream-colored envelope from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. It was my ticket out. It was the yes I'd been praying for since I was a little girl playing with a plastic stethoscope. "Maya, quit fiddling with that bag and help your sister with the iced tea," Brenda snapped, her voice cutting through the Sunday afternoon peace. Alexis was leaning against the counter, looking like a tropical bird in a bright orange sundress. She was currently enrolled in a high-end beauty school, or so she said, but the truth was she'd already been put on academic probation twice. She spent more time at the Lenox Square Mall spending Brenda's emergency money than she did learning how to cut hair. "Mom, my nails are fresh," Alexis whined, holding up hands that featured a $500 set of Swarovski crystal-encrusted acrylics. "I can't be getting condensation on these." Maya's hands are already rough from all that studying anyway. She won't mind. I didn't say a word. I just walked over, grabbed the heavy glass pitcher, and started pouring. That's the thing about being the scapegoat. You learn that your voice is just noise to people who only want to hear their own praise. "So," Brenda said, her eyes landing on me like a hawk, "did you hear back from those local community colleges about that nursing certificate? It's time you start contributing. Alexis's tuition for her master stylist program is $7,800 this semester, and my boutique is a little slow. We need you to pull your weight, Maya." My heart did a slow somersault in my chest. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. I laid it on the lace tablecloth, right next to the bowl of gravy. "I didn't apply to the nursing program, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I got into Johns Hopkins on a full academic scholarship. The package is worth over $64,000 a year." For a second, the house went silent. Big Mama stopped humming, his eyes on the sparrow in the corner. But the look on Alexis's face wasn't pride. It was pure, unadulterated venom. Her eyes darted from the prestigious logo on the envelope to my face, and I saw the gears turning. If I went to Baltimore, if I became a surgeon, I'd be the new star, and Alexis couldn't have that. "Baltimore?" Alexis scoffed, her voice high and shrill. "You can't handle Baltimore. You're too soft. And besides, who's gonna take Big Mama to her appointments? Who's gonna help Mom with the inventory at the shop? You're being selfish, Maya. You're always thinking about your big dreams while we're here doing the real work." "It's a full ride, Alexis," I said. "It means I won't be a burden. I'll be a doctor." Brenda didn't even look at the letter. She just looked at Alexis, who was now pretending to sniffle. "Now look what you've done, Maya. You've upset your sister. She's under so much stress trying to build her brand. And here you are, bragging about some school halfway across the country." I felt the room closing in. I excused myself to go to the bathroom to splash some cold water on my face. I was gone for maybe 3 minutes. When I walked back into the kitchen, the atmosphere had shifted. It felt cold. The smell of the food didn't seem appetizing anymore. Alexis was standing by the trash can, a small electric paper shredder, the one Big Mama used for her old bills, humming on the counter next to her. My heart stopped. The cream-colored envelope was gone. In its place was a pile of thin, vertical strips of paper sitting in the bottom of the plastic bin.
I saw the words John's and medicine peeking out from the mess.
Oops, Alexis said, a demonic little smirk playing on her lips. I thought it was just some of Big Mama's old junk mail. It was sitting right there by the shredder. My bad. I stared at the ruins of my hard work. 10 years of late nights, 4 years of working 2 jobs to pay for my MCAT prep books. Shredded. You did that on purpose, I whispered. Watch your tone, Brenda barked, stepping between me and Alexis. It was an accident, and honestly, it's a sign from God. You aren't meant to go to that school. You're needed here. In fact, I already called the neighbors and the ladies at the church. I told them you didn't get in. I told them you failed the entrance exams and you were too embarrassed to talk about it. You lied? I asked, the betrayal cutting deeper than the shredder blades. I protected our reputation, Brenda said, her chin held high. We don't need people thinking we have a failure in the house. Now, since you won't be going to Baltimore, I need you to go to the bank tomorrow. You have $3,422.10 in your savings account from your graduation gifts. Alexis needs a down payment for her new Mercedes-Benz CLA. It's $2,500. You're going to give it to her as an apology for being so boastful today. I looked at my mother. I looked at my sister, who was now checking her reflection in a $300 Michael Kors gold-plated watch. They weren't just my family. They were my first predators. I could have screamed. I could have called the school and asked for a duplicate letter. I could have fought them right there in Big Mama's kitchen. But I realized something in that moment. If they knew I had a way out, they would never stop trying to clip my wings. So I did the only thing a gray rock can do. I went cold. Okay, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. I'll get the money tomorrow. Alexis beamed. Thanks, Maya. Don't worry. Once I'm a famous stylist, I'll let you work at my front desk. You'll always have a place with me. I walked out of that house and sat in my beat-up 10-year-old Honda Civic. I didn't cry. I just took out my phone and called the admissions office at Johns Hopkins. I told them I'd lost my letter and needed the digital enrollment link sent to a new private email address, one my mother didn't have the password to.
For the next 10 years, I lived a double life. I told them I was working as a receptionist. I told them I was struggling. When I moved to Baltimore, I told them I was house-sitting for a friend while working at a diner. Every time they demanded money, I gave them just enough to keep them quiet, but never enough to make them suspicious. They thought they buried me in that shredder. They thought they'd turned me into their personal ATM and foot soldier. But every time I walked into a lecture hall, every time I held a scalpel for the first time, I thought about those strips of paper in the bottom of the trash can. Back at the table at Le Bilboquet 10 years later, I watched Alexis finish her second glass of champagne. She was still that same girl, flashy, loud, and completely unaware that the person she was mocking was the one who had spent the last decade building a fortress they could never breach. Maya, you're daydreaming again, Alexis snapped, tapping her fake nails on the table. I asked if you could take my car to the car wash tomorrow. I have a meeting with a big luxury brand and I can't be seen in a dusty vehicle. I smiled at her. It was the same smile I'd been practicing since I was 22. Of course, Alexis, I said. I'll make sure everything is handled, just like always. She thought she'd won the round, but she forgot one small thing. I still had the keys to the safe where I kept the records of every cent they'd ever stolen from me. And honey, the interest on that debt was about to become very, very expensive. Now y'all won't believe how the rest of this dinner went down because the audacity was on a whole other level.
There we were, sitting under the dim golden lights of La Bilba Cay, surrounded by people who looked like they stepped out of a luxury magazine, and my sister was performing like she'd just won the lottery. The table was covered in the remains of a meal that cost more than some people's monthly rent. We had the Cajun chicken that everyone raves about, which was $29, the Wagyu beef tartare for $32, and 3 orders of the truffle fries that were $15 each. Alexis and her friends had been inhaling that champagne like it was tap water. I sat there picking at my salad, watching Alexis hold court. She was leaning back in her chair, her $300 designer-inspired heels kicking out from under the table, telling a story about a private meeting she had with a developer for a multi-million-dollar fashion hub. The math wasn't mathing. I knew she'd been late on her $500 car note for 3 months straight because I'd seen the final notice letters tucked under the visor of her car when she made me borrow it to run her errands. Honestly, Alexa said, waving her hand so the light would catch her fake crystals, the pressure of being a mogul is just a lot. I'm thinking about taking the girls to Tulum next month, 5-star only. I'm talking $4,000 a night for the villa. Maya, you can come too, if you can get the time off from your little job. I'm sure they'll let you go if I call and tell them my sister needs a break from the bedpans. Crystal and Tasha laughed. It was that sharp, mean girl laugh that makes you want to roll your eyes so far back you can see your brain. I just took a slow sip of my water. I didn't defend myself. I didn't tell them that the little job I had involved me overseeing a budget of $12 million for the hospital's new surgical wing. I just stayed a gray rock, solid, unmoving. Finally, the waiter came over. He looked tired, probably from having to listen to Alexis's loud conversation for the last 2 hours. He placed the little leather folder in the center of the table. "I'll take that," Alexis said, snatching it up before anyone else could touch it. She didn't even look at the total. She just pulled out a shiny, gold-colored card from her wallet. "Put it all on here, and add a 25% tip. We take care of our people." I watched. I didn't say a word. I already knew what was about to happen. The waiter walked away with the card. Alexis went right back to talking about her vision board and how she was planning to buy a house in a gated community in Alpharetta that cost $1,200,000. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The waiter came back, but he didn't have the receipt. He had that look on his face, the one that says, "I'm about to make this real awkward for you." He leaned in close to Alexis, trying to be discreet, but in a place like this, silence travels fast. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he whispered. "The transaction was declined." The table went dead quiet. Alexis's face turned a shade of purple I didn't even know was possible. "Declined?" she snapped, her voice rising an octave. "That's impossible. Check it again. There must be a problem with your machine. I have $50,000 in that account alone. Call your manager." "We tried it 3 times, ma'am," the waiter said, his voice getting firmer. "It's not the machine." Crystal and Tasha started looking at their phones, suddenly very interested in their Instagram feeds. The squad energy was evaporating faster than the bubbles in their champagne. Alexis started digging through her bag, pulling out 3 more cards. "Try this one. No, this one," she hissed, shoving a stack of plastic at the poor man. He took them, walked away, and came back 2 minutes later. "None of them are working, ma'am. Do you have another form of payment? Perhaps your friends could—" "Oh, I forgot my wallet in my other bag," Tasha said quickly, not even looking up. "Yeah, I'm waiting on my new card to arrive in the mail," Crystal added, her voice shaky. Alexis turned to me. The mask of the successful mogul was gone. Now she looked like the girl who shredded my letter 10 years ago, desperate and mean. "Maya," she whispered, her eyes darting around the restaurant to see if anyone was watching. "Give me your card. I'll pay you back as soon as we get to the car. It's just a glitch with the bank." I looked at the bill inside the folder. It was a lot. The total was $3,575.20. "I don't have a credit card, Alexis," I said calmly. "I told you, I'm just a tech. I live on a budget." "Don't do this right now," Alexis hissed, her grip tightening on the tablecloth. "You have to have something. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. Do you know who is sitting at the table next to us? That's the wife of a senator. If this gets out, my brand is ruined." I let her sweat. I let the silence stretch until the waiter started looking like he was going to call security. The manager was already starting to walk toward our table, his face set in a polite, "but we don't play that" expression. "Well," I said, reaching into my plain Target bag, "I do have some cash I've been saving for my rent. It took me months to put this aside." I pulled out a thick envelope. I didn't make a show of it, but as I opened it, the crisp $100 bills were impossible to ignore. I started counting them out on the table, one by one. 100, 200, 500, 1,000. The waiter's eyes went wide. Alexis's friends stopped pretending to look at their phones and stared at the pile of cash growing on the marble tabletop. I counted out $3,575.20. Then I pulled out another $500. "Keep the change for the trouble," I told the waiter. The waiter looked at me like I was an angel sent from heaven. He took the cash, bowed slightly, and disappeared. Alexis let out a huge breath, her shoulders dropping. She immediately tried to pivot back into her boss persona. "See," Alexis said to her friends, her voice shaky but gaining strength. "I told y'all I'd keep Maya around for a reason. She's my little rainy day fund. I'll just zell you the money later, Maya. Or maybe I'll just give you some of my old designer clothes to make up for it. That dress you're wearing is, well, it's a choice." She laughed, and for a second, Crystal and Tasha joined in, relieved that they didn't have to pay. They thought the crisis was over. They thought they could go back to mocking me now that the bill was settled. I stood up and smoothed out my $22.99 sweater. "Don't worry about the Zell, Alexis," I said, my voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "Consider it a gift. After all, it's the least I can do since you've been so generous with Mom's credit. But just so you know, I called the bank earlier today. I told them there was some suspicious activity on the accounts linked to Big Mama's estate. That's probably why your cards didn't work. The forensic audit starts tomorrow morning." The color drained from Alexis's face. The math was finally starting to math for her. "You did what?" she whispered. "I'm just protecting the family, sis," I said, picking up my bag. "Just like you always say. Anyway, I have an early shift. Those bedpans won't empty themselves." I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I didn't need to see the manager approaching her again, or the look on her friends' faces as they realized the ATM was officially closed. I stepped out into the cool Atlanta air and signaled for my driver. As the black SUV pulled up, I checked my phone. I had a notification from my security system back at Big Mama's house. Someone was trying to get into the safe in the basement. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I still had the keys to the safe, and I'd changed the locks 3 hours ago.
Now, y'all know the minute I stepped into that black SUV, my phone started vibrating like it was possessed. I hadn't even pulled out of the valet line at Le Bilboquet before my screen lit up with a photo of my mother, Brenda, looking holy in her church hat. I didn't answer. I just leaned back into the heated leather seats of my $98,000 Range Rover Autobiography, a car they didn't even know I owned, and let the silence of the cabin wrap around me.
I watched the lights of Buckhead flicker past the window. I just left my sister standing in that restaurant after paying a $3,575.20 bill that she couldn't cover. I'd dropped the word audit like a grenade in the middle of her appetizers, and I knew the shrapnel was already hitting home. By the time I walked into my penthouse, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city and cost me $2,100,000, the flying monkeys were already in full flight. In the world of narcissists, flying monkeys are the people they recruit to do their dirty work. They're the aunties, the cousins, and the church friends will call you up to tell you how disappointed they are in your behavior. And Brenda was the lead pilot of this particular mission. I kicked off my shoes and sat down on my $6,500 velvet sofa, finally hitting accept on the 14th call. Maya Elaine! Brenda's voice screeched through the speakers so loud I had to hold the phone a good 6 inches from my ear. What in the name of Elizabeth Baptist did you do to your sister tonight? Alexis is over here in hysterics. She said you humiliated her in front of the senator's wife. She said you made it seem like she was broke. I poured myself a glass of vintage wine, a bottle that cost $240, and took a slow sip. My heart rate didn't even go up. That's the beauty of being a gray rock. You become a cliff that the waves just break against. I didn't make it seem like anything, Mom, I said, my voice as smooth as the silk robe I was wearing. Her cards declined. I paid the bill. If anything, I saved her from being arrested for theft of services. The bill was over $3,500. Since when do we order $600 bottles of champagne on a tech's salary? Don't you get smart with me, Brenda barked. Your sister is a mogul. She's building a brand. Sometimes business accounts have glitches. But then you had the audacity to talk about an audit in front of her friends? Do you know how that looks? People are already talking. Sister Patterson from the choir called me 10 minutes ago, asking why the successful daughter was being sued by the struggling one. The math wasn't mathing for Brenda because she knew exactly why I mentioned an audit. She and Alexis had been treating Big Mama's estate like a personal piggy bank ever since Big Mama started showing signs of dementia. I'm not suing anyone, Mom. I'm just looking into the accounts, I said. Since I'm the one who's been paying for Big Mama's $500 a week private nursing care, I thought I should see where the rest of her Social Security and the rental income from the Cascade House is going. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. That money is being handled. It's being reinvested into Alexis's boutique. Which brings me to why I'm really calling. Alexis needs $10,000 by Friday. The contractor for her Phipps Plaza location is threatening to walk off the job. You're going to give it to her. It's the least you can do after the way you acted tonight. I almost laughed. The audacity of a woman who told the whole church I was a failure, now demanding $10,000 for the sister who shredded my dreams. I don't have $10,000, Mom. I told you I'm just a tech. Don't lie to me, Maya. I saw that envelope of cash you had at the restaurant. Alexis said there must have been at least $5,000 in there. If you have that kind of money for rent, you have it for your family. We are talking about your sister's future. If this boutique doesn't open, we lose everything. The boutique is supposed to pay for Big Mama's care eventually. Eventually isn't now, I said, and I don't have it. That cash was my entire savings. You are so selfish. Brenda started crying now, the fake performative sob she used whenever she didn't get her way at the Sunday dinner table. I raised you better than this. After everything I sacrificed for you, after I stayed by your side when you failed your medical exams." "I didn't fail, Mom. You lied and told people I failed." "I protected you," she screamed, the tears disappearing instantly. "And this is how you repay me? By letting your sister's business crumble? Fine. If that's how you want to be, don't bother coming to Sunday dinner, and don't bother calling me when you're lonely and broke in that little apartment of yours." She slammed the phone down. I sat in my $2 million penthouse, surrounded by $500 candles and $3,000 art pieces, and I smiled. She thought she was punishing me by uninviting me to a dinner where I was always the one doing the dishes anyway. She thought she was cutting me off from a family that only valued me for what they could take from me. But here's what Brenda and Alexis didn't know. I didn't just mention an audit to scare them. I'd already finished it. I knew exactly how they'd forged Big Mama's signature to take out a $300,000 home equity line of credit on the Cascade House. I knew they'd spent $200,000 of it on Alexis's clothes, travel, and fake rich lifestyle. And as for that Phipps Plaza boutique that needed $10,000 for the contractor, I picked up my laptop and opened a file. The boutique location wasn't in Phipps Plaza. It was in a smaller luxury strip mall nearby. And I knew that because my holding company, the one I'd built while they thought I was house-sitting in Baltimore, had just purchased the entire building for $4,800,000. Alexis wasn't just behind on her contractor payments. She was 2 months behind on her rent to the previous owner. I leaned back and watched a notification pop up on my screen. It was an email from my lawyer. The eviction papers were ready to be served. They thought I was the gray rock they could just step on to get to the top. They thought they could send flying monkeys to shame me into opening my wallet again. But they forgot one small thing. When you kick a rock, the only thing that ends up broken is your toe. Brenda thought she'd had the last word. But as I looked at the eviction notice for the boutique, I realized the conversation was just getting started. She wanted $10,000 to save the boutique, but the startup capital she was looking for was about to become the shutdown capital for their entire charade. I took one last sip of my wine and felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a plan coming together. He thought he'd won the phone call, but he forgot one small thing. I didn't just have the keys to the safe. I owned the building the safe was sitting in. Now, y'all, I need you to lean in close for this part, because the sheer level of greed I witnessed next is something you only see in movies. After Brenda hung up on me, thinking she'd really hurt my feelings by banning me from Sunday dinner, I didn't sit around crying. I didn't reach for a pint of ice cream. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the live feed for the security cameras I'd installed at Big Mama's house in Cascade. See, when Big Mama started getting a little forgetful, I didn't just pay for the $3,000 a month private nursing. I spent $1,575.80 on a top-of-the-line hidden security system. I had cameras tucked into the crown molding and doorbell cams that could see a squirrel's heartbeat from a mile away. I watched the screen as a flashy white Mercedes-Benz, the one Alexis was supposedly struggling to pay for, pulled into the driveway. Brenda climbed out of the passenger side, wearing a tracksuit that probably cost $350, looking like she was on a mission. Alexis followed her, looking irritated, clutching a Desire bag that I knew was a $2,800 Louis Vuitton she'd bought with the emergency money she'd guilted out of me last Christmas. They weren't there to check on Big Mama. I knew that because Big Mama was currently at her physical therapy appointment, a service that cost me $225 a session. The house was empty. "I'm telling you, Mom, the deed has to be in that mahogany desk." Alexis's voice came through my laptop speakers, crisp and clear.
If we can just get the house in my name, I can use it as collateral for a $250,000 business loan. That's enough to finish the boutique and pay off those vultures at the bank."
I sat back in my $8,000 ergonomic office chair and took a sip of my cold brew coffee. The audacity was truly a work of art.
Brenda was rummaging through Big Mama's drawers, tossing aside old church programs and recipes like they were trash. We have to be fast. Maya is getting nosy with this audit talk. She's always been jealous of your light, Alexis. She wants to see you fail because she couldn't make it as a doctor.
She's just a bitter tech mom. She doesn't understand high-level finance, Alexis scoffed. She pulled out a stack of papers and started flipping through them. "Here, this is the old deed from when Grandpa bought the place. But it says it's in a trust now. What does that mean?"
Brenda snatched the paper. "It doesn't matter. We'll just tell the notary that Maya signed her rights over to you years ago. I have a friend from the choir, Sister Sheila's nephew, who's a notary. He'll stamp anything for $500 and a plate of my short ribs." My blood didn't boil, it turned into ice. They were sitting in Big Mama's living room, surrounded by memories of Sunday dinners and HBCU graduations, plotting to steal the only thing our family truly owned. The Cascade house was a historic gem. In the current market, it was worth at least $875,000. To them, it was just a chip they could play at a casino. "Wait," Alexis said, holding up a blank quitclaim deed she'd clearly printed out at home. "We need Maya's signature for this to look legit. If she's a beneficiary of the trust, she has to sign off." "Just sign it yourself," Brenda said, waving her hand dismissively. "You've been practicing her handwriting since you were 10 and wanted to sign her name on those failing report cards she supposedly got. Just scribble it. Nobody is going to check. By the time Maya finds out, the money will be in your account and the boutique will be famous." I watched on the screen as Alexis sat down at Big Mama's kitchen table, the same table where I used to study for my MCATs by candlelight, so I wouldn't wake them up. She took out a pen and, with a practiced flick of her wrist, forged my name on a legal document that would, in theory, strip me of my inheritance. They were so loud, so arrogant, so sure that I was still that quiet, struggling daughter they could manipulate with a phone call. They didn't realize that the gray rock they were trying to bury was actually a mountain. The math really wasn't mathing for them. See, they thought the house was still in a trust controlled by Big Mama. What they didn't know, because they never bothered to read the mail that didn't have a check in it, was that I had purchased the house from the trust 3 years ago when Big Mama needed her first surgery. I paid $550,000 in cash to the trust to ensure the house stayed in the family and that Big Mama would never have to worry about a mortgage again. I legally owned that house. Every brick, every blade of grass, and every piece of that mahogany desk belonged to me. Alexis blew on the ink to dry it. "There, done. Maya Elaine. Officially out of the way. I'll take this to Sheila's nephew tomorrow morning. We'll have the loan by next week." "That's my girl," Brenda beamed, patting Alexis on the cheek. "You were always the smart one. Now let's get out of here before that nurse comes back. I don't want to have to pretend to care about Big Mama's blood pressure for 45 minutes. They walked out of the house laughing, and the front door clicked shut. I sat in the silence of my penthouse for a long time, watching the empty living room on my screen. I felt a flicker of something, not sadness, but a finality. The last thread of family loyalty had just been shredded, and this time, I wasn't the one holding the pieces. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved under Expert Alley. "Hey, it's Maya," I said when he picked up. "The bait has been taken. They just forged a quick claim deed on the Cascade property. I have the high-definition video, the audio of them admitting the forgery, and the original purchase contract from 3 years ago."
Excellent, my lawyer, Marcus, replied. His voice was as cool as mine. That's a felony in the state of Georgia. Do you want me to file the police report now?
Not yet, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I want them to try to use it. I want them to take that forged document to the bank. I want Alexis to sign for that $250,000 loan. Let them think they've won. Let them spend a few more nights dreaming about their mogul life. You're playing a dangerous game, Maya, Marcus warned.
No, I replied. I'm playing a long game. I've been the scapegoat for 10 years, Marcus. I can wait one more week to become the judge. I hung up and walked over to my window. Below me, the city of Atlanta was glowing. I could see the lights of Buckhead and, further off, the quiet trees of Cascade. They thought they were being so slick, so Buckhead wealthy, while they were actually just common criminals in expensive tracksuits. They didn't realize that every move they made was being recorded by a woman who had spent a decade learning how to fix broken hearts and how to stop them if necessary. He thought he'd won the house. But he forgot one small thing. You can't steal a house from the person who already holds the deed, the title, and the camera footage of you doing it. Now, y'all, I've heard people say that the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales, but I didn't realize it would happen this fast. Just 24 hours after I watched my sister and mother forge my signature on that deed in Big Mama's kitchen, the influencer lifestyle Alexis worked so hard to fake came crashing down in the most public way possible. It was a Wednesday morning, and I was in my private office at Northside Hospital. My office is a corner suite that cost the hospital a pretty penny to maintain. We're talking about custom Italian leather chairs that cost $5,200 apiece and a view of the Atlanta skyline that would make a developer weep. I was wearing my custom-tailored surgical scrubs, which cost $185 a set, and I was sipping on a $300 bottle of cold-pressed green juice while I reviewed the day's surgical schedule. I had a $400,000 robotic heart surgery scheduled for noon, but my phone buzzed with a notification that wasn't about a patient. It was a live alert from Alexis's Instagram. Even though I'd blocked her on my personal accounts, I had a burner phone I used to keep tabs on her brand. I clicked the link. Alexis was in the middle of a Get Ready With Me video. She was sitting in her vanity chair, a piece she'd told everyone was an antique, but I knew was a $700 knockoff from a discount site. She was slathering her face in a luxury gold serum that cost $250 an ounce, talking to her besties about her big news. "So, y'all," Alexis said, her voice full of that fake, breathy excitement. "I wasn't going to say anything yet, but the ink is dry on the new estate. Big things are happening. We're moving from the city to a historic manor in Cascade. It's been in the family for generations, but I'm the one finally taking over the title. It shows that when you work hard and stay aligned with your goals, the world just opens up for you." She picked up a $400 Dyson Airwrap to start on her hair, but then something shifted. I saw it before she did. Her eyes went wide, and she suddenly clutched her chest with her left hand, the one still wearing that fake Cartier bracelet. "I think the lights are too bright," she whispered. The Dyson fell to the floor with a loud thud. Alexis tried to stand up, but her legs gave out like they were made of water. She slumped forward, her face hitting the vanity, knocking over a $300 bottle of perfume that shattered everywhere. The camera was still rolling. The comments were scrolling by at lightning speed. "Is she okay? Is this a prank? Alexis." I didn't panic. I'm a surgeon. I don't do panic. I looked at the screen and saw the way her hand was curled, the way her breathing had become shallow and ragged. I knew exactly what was happening.
It wasn't stress, and it wasn't a fainting spell for views. It was a congenital mitral valve prolapse, a condition I'd tried to tell Brenda about years ago when Alexis was at Spelman, but Brenda told me I was just jealous and trying to make my sister look weak. I closed the app and waited. 10 minutes later, my pager went off. Code blue, VIP wing, arrival in 5. I walked out of my office, my heels clicking against the $200,000 marble floors of the surgical center. I didn't run. I moved with the calm, steady pace of a woman who knows exactly where she's going. When I reached the ER entrance, the chaos was already in full swing. A black Mercedes-Benz, the one with the $300 past-due car note, screeched into the ambulance bay. Brenda jumped out of the passenger seat, her hair a mess, wearing a tracksuit that probably cost $450. She was screaming so loud you could hear her in the parking deck. "My daughter! Someone save my daughter! She's a celebrity! She's an influencer! I need the head of the hospital right now!" The paramedics were pulling Alexis out of the back seat on a stretcher. She was pale, her 40-inch install tangled in the oxygen mask they'd slapped on her face. She looked small. She looked human. She didn't look like a mogul anymore. "Ma'am, you need to stay back," a nurse said, trying to guide Brenda toward the waiting room. "Do you know who I am?" Brenda shrieked, waving her $500 designer handbag in the nurse's face. "I am Brenda Sterling. My daughter is the face of Atlanta fashion. If anything happens to her, I will sue this hospital for $10 million. I want the best doctor you have. I want the chief." I was standing about 10 feet away, behind the glass doors of the surgical suite. I had my mask on, my cap pulled low. I watched as they wheeled Alexis into trauma room 1. "Status?" I asked, stepping into the room. My voice was muffled by the mask, but the authority in it made the ER docs stop and look up. 31-year-old female collapsed during a live stream, the resident said, breathing hard. "Heart rate is 140 and climbing. Blood pressure is dropping. We're seeing a massive murmur. We need a cardio consult immediately." "I'm the consult," I said. I walked over to the bed. I looked down at my sister. The luxury gold serum was smeared across her cheek, mixed with sweat and tears. She looked up at me, her eyes unfocused, her hand reaching out for something to hold. She didn't recognize me. To her, I was just another nameless doctor in a mask. "Help me," she wheezed. "I've got you," I said, my voice cold and professional. I checked her vitals on the monitor, a machine that cost the hospital $150,000. The math really wasn't mathing for her heart. It was failing. She needed a valve replacement, and she needed it within the next 12 hours, or she wasn't going to make it to see her new estate. I turned to the resident. "Move her to the VIP cardiac floor. Prep the OR for a $5 million robotic-assisted bypass, and get the family into a private waiting room. I'll speak to them when she's stable." I walked out of the trauma room and headed toward the scrub sinks. I could hear Brenda in the hallway, still screaming at the staff about her rights and demanding to see the surgeon. She had no idea that the failure she'd uninvited from Sunday dinner was the only person in the state of Georgia qualified to perform the surgery that would save her golden child's life. I spent the next hour reviewing Alexis's charts, and that's when I found the biggest lie of all. As I looked at the insurance information Alexis had provided at admissions, I saw a familiar name. She wasn't using her own insurance. She was using mine. She'd forged my medical identity to get a Platinum Premier plan that cost $2,400 a month, a plan she'd been using to pay for her skincare doctors and boutique health treatments for the last 2 years. She didn't just steal my name on a deed, she stole my identity to live a life she couldn't afford. I leaned back and looked at the clock. It was nearly noon. The OR was ready, My team was waiting. I thought about the shredder. I thought about the strips of paper in the trash can 10 years ago. I thought about the $3,500 dinner bill I'd paid while she mocked me. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally pushed the gray rock out of the family for good. But she forgot one small thing. When you're lying on a table with your chest wide open, the only thing that matters isn't your brand or your estate, it's the person holding the scalpel. I stood up and started to scrub. I had a life to save. But I also had a few more receipts to print. Y'all, there is a specific kind of quiet that happens right before a storm hits, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I was at the scrub sink outside of Operating Room 8, which is part of our hospital's $5 million robotic surgical suite. The water was hitting my hands at exactly 100 degrees, filtered through a system that cost the hospital $45,000 to install. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the Atlanta skyline, watching the sun hit the top of the Westin. It looked peaceful from up here, but through the double glass doors behind me, the circus was in town, and my mother, Brenda, was the ringmaster. Now, y'all won't believe the scene I was looking at through those doors. Brenda was in the VIP waiting lounge, a room that features $12,000 Italian leather sofas and a private espresso bar that serves $300 bags of Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. Most people in that room are quiet, hushed by the weight of whatever medical crisis brought them there. Not Brenda. She was pacing the floor in her $350 Gucci sneakers, her voice carrying over the expansive partitions like she was shouting from the pulpit at Sunday service. "I need to see the chief right now," Brenda was yelling at the poor receptionist, a young girl who looked like she wanted to crawl under her $3,000 mahogany desk. "My daughter is Alexis Sterling. Do you know how many followers she has? She is the face of Atlanta luxury. If she dies because you're making us wait in this waiting room, I will have your job and this whole building." I watched her through the glass. It's funny how people who have the least always scream the loudest about what they're owed. Brenda didn't know I was standing 10 feet away. She didn't know that the struggling tech she'd spent 10 years mocking was actually the woman whose name was on the deed to the very wing she was standing in. I turned off the water with my foot and held my hands up, letting the excess moisture drip off. My expert ally, Dr. Marcus Thorne, walked up to the sink next to me. Marcus is a 6'4" powerhouse of a man, a Morehouse grad who I've known since our days hanging out at the AUC. He's the head of cardiology, and he's the only one in this building who knows my whole story. He was wearing a Patek Philippe watch that cost $52,000 under his lab coat, and he gave me a look that said, "Honey, your family is a whole mess." "The golden child is prepped," Marcus whispered, leaning in so the sensors wouldn't trigger the water. "Her vitals are trash, Maya. The mitral valve is shredded. If we don't get in there in the next hour, she's not making it to her next brand deal. Your mother is currently threatening to sue the hospital, the city, and probably God himself." "Let her scream, Marcus," I said, my voice as cold as the antiseptic on my skin. "It keeps her occupied." "She's asking for the surgeon," Marcus said with a smirk. "The one she heard was the best in the Southeast. She told the nurse she doesn't want any low-level workers touching her baby. She actually said, and I quote, 'I want the doctor who drives the 6-figure car, not the one who takes the bus.'" I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a scalpel. Brenda was demanding the best while having no idea that she'd spend the last decade trying to destroy the very hands she was now praying for. "I'm ready," I said. "But I'm staying behind the mask, Marcus. I want you to be the face of the consultation. I want you to go out there and tell them exactly what the situation is. I'll be in the room, but I'm the lead consultant today. I want to hear what they say when they think I'm just another faceless doctor." Marcus nodded. He knew the plan. He walked through the double doors, and I followed a few paces behind, my face covered by a surgical mask and a blue cap pulled low over my eyes. As we walked into the VIP lounge, Brenda stood up so fast she almost tipped over her $400 designer handbag. She rushed Marcus like he was a long-lost relative. "Dr. Thorne, thank God," Brenda cried, her voice suddenly turning into that church mother sweetness that she used to manipulate the deacons. "They told me you were the one. My daughter, she's so young, so successful. She has a $250,000 boutique opening next month. She's the heart of this family." Marcus kept his face like stone. "Mrs. Starling, the situation is critical. Your daughter has a severe congenital defect. We need to operate immediately. The surgery itself will cost approximately $325,000, not including the post-op care in the ICU, which runs about $8,000 a day." Brenda didn't even blink at the numbers. Why would she? She thought she was playing with my money. "Do whatever it takes. We have the best insurers. Platinum Premier. My other daughter, Maya, she's a tech here. She handles all of that. She's the one who made sure we were covered." I stood behind Marcus, my arms crossed, watching her lie with the grace of a professional. She was actually using me as her proof of funds while simultaneously treating me like the help. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. "About that insurance," Marcus said, pulling up a tablet that cost $1,200. "We ran the cards. The policy is in the name of a Maya Sterling, but the patient is Alexis Sterling. There seems to be a discrepancy in the medical ID. If this is flagged as fraud, the insurance won't cover a single cent of that $325,000. You'll be personally liable for the bill." Brenda's face faltered for a fraction of a second, but then she straightened her $500 blazer. "It's a family plan. Maya put her sister on it. She's a very generous girl. She knows her place is to support her sister's vision. Don't worry about the money. Just save my daughter." I looked at the insurance screen on Marcus's tablet. The monthly premium for the plan Alexis was using was $2,400 a month. Over 2 years, she'd stolen nearly $60,000 in premiums and services from me, and that didn't even count the prescriptions she'd forged in my name. The math wasn't mathing for her soul, and the bill was finally coming due. "We're moving her to OR 8 now," Marcus said. "This is the lead surgeon for the case." He gestured toward me, but he didn't use my name. Brenda looked at me. She looked right into my eyes, the same eyes she'd looked into when she told me I was a failure 10 years ago. But because I was behind a mask, because I was wearing the $500 surgical loops around my neck, she didn't see her disappointment of a daughter. She saw a savior. "Please, doctor," Brenda said, her voice trembling. "Save her. She's all I have. She's the only one in this family who ever made something of herself." I didn't say a word. I didn't even nod. I just turned and walked back toward the scrub area. I had work to do. I had to go into that room and fix a heart that had been broken from the day it was born. I was going to use a robotic system that cost more than Brenda's and Alexis's combined dreams, just to make sure my sister lived long enough to face the consequences of everything she'd done. As I walked away, I heard Brenda turn to Marcus. "See? That's what a real doctor looks like, not like my other daughter, Maya. You should see her, Dr. Thorne. She's always covered in hospital grime and looking like she hasn't slept in a week. It's a shame, really. Some people are just born to be at the bottom." I stepped back into the sterile field, the automatic doors sliding shut with a hiss. He thought he'd won the conversation, but he forgot one small thing.
I was about to be the one holding his daughter's heart in my hands, and once I finished saving her life, I was going to spend the rest of the afternoon making sure they never had a bottom to go back to.
Now, y'all, while my team was in Operating Room 8 setting up that $5 million Da Vinci robotic system, I had exactly 45 minutes to finish what I started. Most surgeons use their pre-op time to go over charts or listen to classical music to get their head right. Not me. I went straight to my private office, locked the door, and pulled up the final report from the forensic accountant I'd hired for $15,000. I sat down in my $8,000 ergonomic chair and opened the file. The math wasn't just not mathing anymore, it was a straight-up crime scene. See, Brenda and Alexis thought they were being so slick. They thought because they were the stars of the family, I was too busy emptying bedpans and struggling to notice the slow bleed of our family's legacy. But the numbers don't lie, and honey, these numbers were screaming. The audit showed that over the last 3 years, Alexis had siphoned off exactly $142,658.12 from Big Mama's primary savings account. That was the account Big Mama had spent 40 years building by working 2 jobs and saving every nickel she made at the school cafeteria. It was supposed to be for her end-of-life comfort and a scholarship fund for the next generation of our family to head off to an HBCU. Alexis had spent it on branding. I'm talking about a $12,000 influencer retreat to Dubai that didn't result in a single contract. I'm talking about $22,000 in promotional photography where she just took pictures of herself holding empty designer shopping bags. And the biggest blow? That $300,000 home equity line of credit they took out on Big Mama's house by forging my name? They'd already blown through $285,000 of it. The boutique they were so obsessed with? It was a money pit. They'd spent $45,000 just on interior styling, gold-plated racks and velvet curtains, while the actual rent for the space hadn't been paid in 2 months. I was staring at a line item for a $5,800 consultation fee paid to some life coach when a frantic pounding started on my office door. "Maya, I know you're in there. Open this door right now." It was Brenda. Of course it was. I closed the laptop, smoothed out my $185 scrubs, and opened the door. Brenda pushed past me, her $350 Gucci sneakers squeaking on the polished floors. She looked like she was about to have a stroke, her face flushed under her $400 lace front wig. "Maya, thank God," she panted, clutching a stack of envelopes. "You have to do something. I just got a call from the bank. They're saying there's an investigative hold on the Cascade House accounts. They said someone reported irregularities. I can't get the $10,000 for the contractor, and the bank is threatening to freeze everything." I leaned against my desk, crossing my arms. I stayed a gray rock. I didn't give her a single spark of emotion to feed on. "That sounds serious, Mom," I said calmly. "Why would there be irregularities?" "I don't know," Brenda shrieked, waving the envelopes in the air. "It must be a mistake, or maybe it's those hacks Alexis is always talking about. But listen, the hospital, they said the surgery for Alexis is going to be $325,000 because of the insurance glitch. You're the tech here. You know people. You need to go down to the billing office and tell them to put it on a payment plan under your name. You have good credit. You're boring. The banks love people like you." The audacity. She wanted me to sign for a $325,000 debt to cover a surgery for a sister who stole my identity and shredded my dreams, all while she was trying to hide the fact that she'd stolen our grandmother's house. "Mom," I said, my voice low and steady, "I'm going to give you one chance. One last chance to be honest with me. Did you and Alexis take out a loan on Big Mama's house? And did you forge my signature to do it? Brenda's eyes darted to the side, the classic narcissist tell. Then she puffed out her chest, trying to look righteous. "How dare you?" she barked, her voice trembling with fake outrage. "How dare you accuse your mother of such a thing? We did what we had to do to secure the family's future. Alexis is going to be a star. When she's a multi-millionaire, she'll pay it all back. We didn't forge anything. We used the authority we had as the ones actually taking care of this family while you were off studying and teching and being useless." "So you did sign my name," I said. "It's a family house, Maya. It belongs to all of us. And right now, Alexis needs it more. Now quit being so sensitive and give me your credit card information. I need to pay that $500 notary fee to Sister Sheila's nephew to get the second draw on the loan released before the bank freezes the account for good." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the greed, the desperation, and the total lack of remorse. She wasn't a mother in this moment. She was a predator who had run out of prey. "No," I said. Brenda froze. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not giving you a cent, and I'm not signing for any surgery."
"You selfish, wicked girl," Brenda screamed, stepping toward me. She raised her hand as if she were going to slap me right there in my chief of surgery office. "Your sister is lying on a table down the hall. Her heart is failing, and you're worried about a few dollars and some paperwork? If she dies, her blood is on your hands. I'll tell the whole church. I'll tell Big Mama. You'll be a pariah."
"The surgery is already happening, Mom," I said, checking my $2,000 Apple Watch. "The chief surgeon is in the room as we speak. Alexis will live. But the lifestyle you built on Big Mama's back, that's what's dying today." "What are you talking about?" Brenda hissed. "I'm the one who reported the irregularities, Mom. I'm the one who initiated the forensic on it, and I'm the one who owned the Cascade House. I bought it 3 years ago. The trust you thought you were stealing from, it was empty because I had already moved the assets to protect Big Mama from people exactly like you." Brenda backed away, her face turning a ghostly shade of gray. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. The math was finally, painfully starting to math. You bought the house?" she whispered. "Every brick," I said. "And the insurance Alexis is using, it's mine. And I've already filed the fraud report with the provider. By the time she wakes up from surgery, she won't just have a new heart valve, she'll have a felony warrant for identity theft and insurance fraud." Brenda slumped against the doorframe, her $500 handbag slipping from her fingers and hitting the floor with a heavy thud. For the first time in 10 years, she was silent. "Now," I said, walking toward the door, "I have a surgery to finish. You should probably use this time to call a lawyer. But don't bother calling Sister Sheila's nephew. I hear the district attorney is already looking into his notary license." I walked past her, my scrubs swishing in the quiet hallway. I didn't feel heavy. I felt light. I felt like the girl who'd watched her dreams get shredded 10 years ago was finally whole again. Now, y'all won't believe what happened when I walked back into that surgical suite. I looked through the observation glass and saw my team waiting. My expert ally, Marcus, was standing by the robot, looking at the monitors. But as I reached for the scrub brush to do my final wash, I saw something on the vitals monitor that made my breath hitch. Alexis's heart wasn't just failing, it was stopping. The one last chance I gave Brenda was over, Now it was just me, the machine, and the sister who thought she could shred my life. He thought he'd won the house, the money, and the fame, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the only one who knows how to restart his heart.
Now, y'all, after I left Brenda shaking like a leaf in my office hallway, I had to shift gears. You see, being a surgeon means you have to have a switch. You can be dealing with a family of vultures one minute, but the second you step toward that sterile zone, you have to become ice, cold, precise, and untouchable.
I walked down to the VIP pre-op holding area. This isn't like the regular part of the hospital where people are packed in behind thin curtains. No, honey, this is the gold wing. Each room costs $2,500 a night just for the space. The floors are polished granite, the lighting is recessed and warm, and every patient gets a $500 silk robe instead of those scratchy cotton ones that tie in the back. I stopped at the nurse's station to check the vitals one last time on a monitor that cost $65,000. Alexis's heart rate was still dancing around 110 beats per minute. She was terrified, but knowing my sister, she was probably more worried about how she'd look in her post-op recovery selfies than the actual surgery. "Dr. Thorne is already in the OR," the nurse whispered to me, "but the patient is being difficult. She's refusing the sedative until she speaks to the lead surgeon. She says she won't go under until she knows the person in charge has the right pedigree." I almost laughed. Even with a failing heart, Alexis was still trying to check the guest list. "I'll handle it," I said. I pulled on my surgical cap, making sure every strand of my hair was tucked away. I adjusted my mask, pulling it tight over the bridge of my nose, and slid on my $2,500 surgical loops, those high-powered magnifying glasses that stay around my neck. When I'm in this gear, with the blue light of the monitors reflecting off my goggles, I don't look like Maya from Sunday Dinner. I look like a machine. I pushed open the heavy wooden door to her private suite.
The room smelled like $200 lavender candles, which are technically against fire code, but Brenda must have bullied a janitor into letting her light them. Alexis was propped up on the bed, her 40-inch install spilled across the pillows like a dark river. She was clutching her phone in one hand and a $500 designer silk pillow from home in the other.
"It's about time," Alexis snapped, not even looking up from her screen. She was busy deleting comments on her last post, the one where she fainted. "I've been waiting 20 minutes. Do you have any idea how much my time is worth? My brand is losing $10,000 an hour every second I'm stuck in this bed." I didn't say a word. I just walked to the foot of the bed and picked up her digital chart.
"I asked you a question," Alexis said, finally dropping her phone. Her eyes were glassy from the initial meds, but the arrogance was still working overtime. "Are you the one doing the surgery? Because I told the other doctor, the tall one, that I don't want any students or residents practicing on me. I need the best. I'm a high-profile client. If you mess up my scar, I'll make sure your career is over before the anesthesia wears off." I stepped closer, the heels of my hospital clogs silent on the granite. I checked the IV line, a setup that costs $350 just for the disposables, and adjusted the flow of the pre-op sedative.
"The surgery will be a robotic-assisted mitral valve replacement," I said, my voice muffled and deep behind the mask. "We'll be using a $5 million Da Vinci system. The incision will be less than 2 inches. You'll be fine, Alexis."
She stiffened. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing as she tried to peer past the goggles and the mask. "How do you know my name? And why do you sound so familiar?"
"I know a lot about you," I said. My voice is calm as a graveyard.
I know about the congenital defect you've ignored for years. I know about the $300,000 loan you're trying to take out on a house you don't own. And I know you're currently using insurance that belongs to someone else."
Alexis's jaw dropped. She tried to sit up, but the sedative was starting to pull at her limbs, making her movements slow and heavy. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice losing its edge. "Are you with the bank? Is this some kind of joke? Brenda! Mom! Get in here!" "Brenda isn't coming," I said. "She's a little busy trying to explain to the fraud department why her signature looks exactly like a forgery of mine." I reached up, slowly. I unhooked the loops of the mask from behind my ears. I let the blue fabric fall. Then I pushed the surgical loops up onto my forehead. Alexis gasped, a sharp, wet sound that rattled in her chest. Her eyes went wide, the pupils dilating as the realization hit her like a freight train. "Maya?" she breathed. No, that's not possible. You're a tech. You empty bedpans. Mom said you were a failure." "Mom says a lot of things when she's trying to keep you under her thumb, Alexis," I said, leaning over the bed so our faces were only inches apart. But the math never quite matched her stories, did it? You thought I was the gray rock you could just kick out of the way. You thought that by shredding that letter 10 years ago, you could stop me from becoming exactly who I am. I pointed to the Chief of Surgery embroidery on my $185 scrubs. "I'm not the struggling sister anymore, Alexis. I'm the woman who's about to open your chest and fix the heart you spent 30 years neglecting while you chased likes and clout. I'm the one who bought Big Mama's house. I'm the one who paid for your dinner. And I'm the only reason you're gonna wake up tomorrow." The monitors began to beep faster. Alexis's heart was racing, her panic fighting against the drugs I'd just increased. You can't do the surgery," she stammered, her tongue starting to feel thick in her mouth. "It's a conflict of interest. I'll sue. I'll tell everyone you're trying to kill me." "I'm not trying to kill you, sis," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "I'm much better at surgery than I was at emptying bedpans. I'm going to save you, because I want you to be wide awake when the police are waiting in your recovery room. I want you to be healthy enough to stand in front of a judge and explain why you thought my life was yours to shred." Alexis tried to reach for her phone, but her hand just flopped onto the silk sheets. Her eyelids were fluttering now, the heavy sleep of the $500 anesthesia dose finally taking over. "Maya, please," she murmured, her voice fading into a slur. "Don't worry," I whispered, reaching out to pat her hand, the one with the fake Cartier bracelet that was currently being recorded as personal property by the hospital intake. "I'll see you in the morning. But honey, the mogul life you've been living, that's staying under the anesthesia." I watched as her eyes finally closed. The room went quiet, save for the steady, rhythmic hum of the $12,000 life support monitors. I pulled my mask back up. I lowered my goggles. I was back in the switch. I walked to the door and opened it. Dr. Thorne was standing there, checking his $52,000 watch. "She's under," I said. "You ready?" Marcus asked, looking at me with a mix of concern and respect. "This is a high-stakes case, Maya, not just medically." "I've been preparing for this for 10 years, Marcus," I said, stepping out into the hallway. "The medical part is the easy bit. The red wedding starts when she wakes up." Now, y'all, I know you're waiting for the moment the receipts get presented in public. And believe me, the surgery was just the prologue. Because while Alexis was dreaming under my care, I was making one final phone call to the events coordinator at the Atlanta Luxury Expo. He thought he'd won because he was the golden child, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who controls the lights, the sound, and the final reveal. Now y'all won't believe the atmosphere in Operating Room 8. After I walked out of that pre-op suite and left my sister's ego drifting off into a drug-induced slumber, the air changed. The double doors hissed shut with a vacuum seal that cost this hospital $300,000 just to maintain. In here, it's not about brands or clout. It's about the cold, hard reality of biology. I stood at the scrub sink for the second time, but this time it wasn't for show. I spent exactly 5 minutes scrubbing my hands and arms with antimicrobial soap that costs the hospital $85 a gallon. As the water ran, I looked at my reflection in the stainless steel. I didn't see the struggling daughter or the failed student Brenda tried to create. I saw the chief of surgery. I saw a woman who'd spent 4 years at Spelman and another decade in the trenches of the most elite medical institutions in the world. I stepped into the OR and it looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. In the center of the room sat the Da Vinci Xi surgical system. This machine cost $5,400,000, and that doesn't even include the annual maintenance contract of $200,000. It's a masterpiece of engineering, with 4 robotic arms that can move with more precision than any human hand ever could. "Patient is prepped and draped," Dr. Thorne said, his voice coming through the intercom system. Marcus was standing by the table, but I was headed for the console. I sat down at the cockpit. That's what we call it. I slipped my fingers into the master controllers and pressed my face against the 3-dimensional high-definition viewer. Suddenly, I wasn't just in a room in Atlanta, I was inside my sister's chest. The magnification was so clear, I could see the individual fibers of her heart muscle. "Time out," I said. My voice was steady, carrying through the room. "Patient is Alexis Sterling. Procedure is a robotic-assisted mitral valve repair. We're also looking for evidence of the secondary complications I suspected during her intake." "Ready when you are, Chief," the head nurse said, checking a monitor that cost $125,000. I began the first incision. It was less than an inch long. In a regular surgery, they'd have to crack her ribs and open her up like a book, leaving a scar that would ruin her bikini-ready brand forever. But because she was under my care, I was using instruments that cost $15,000 each just for a single use. As I maneuvered the robotic arms, I could see the damage. Her mitral valve looked like a piece of wet tissue paper that had been shredded, much like that letter 10 years ago. It was flapping uselessly with every beat, letting blood leak backward into her lungs. The math wasn't mathing for her survival if she'd waited another 24 hours. "Look at that," Marcus muttered, watching the $200,000 auxiliary screens. "She's lucky she collapsed where she did. Another day and she'd have been a goner." "She's lucky I'm the one holding the controls, Marcus," I replied. I didn't say it with pride, I said it as a fact. As I worked, the room was silent except for the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the life support workstation, a piece of equipment that costs $450,000. I was focused on the suture, a specialized thread that costs $200 a pack. I was weaving her heart back together with the same patience I'd used to weave my own life back together after they tried to destroy it. But then the alarm started. A sharp, high-pitched wail cut through the silence. The green lines on the $150,000 monitor turned yellow, then red. "Pressure is dropping," the anesthesiologist shouted. 80 over 40, 75 over 30. She's going into VFib. "Stay calm," I said. My hands didn't shake, not even a millimeter. If I moved too fast, the robot would tear through her heart like paper. Marcus, check the bypass lines. Anesthesia, give her a bolus of epinephrine and 200 milligrams of amiodarone.
She's flatlining, Maya.
Marcus yelled, his expert ally mask slipping for a second.
I looked at the screen. My sister's heart, the one that had beaten with so much arrogance just a few hours ago, had completely stopped. The room felt like it was underwater. For a split second, a thought flashed through my mind. I thought about the Sunday dinner where she laughed while I did the dishes. I thought about the $300,000 debt she'd tried to put on my name. I thought about how easy it would be to just let go.
If I stopped now, Brenda would get the life insurance. Alexis would be a tragic legend in the Atlanta influencer scene. And I'd be free of them forever.
But then I remembered the HBCU spirit Big Mama always talked about. Character isn't what you do when everyone is watching, Maya. It's what you do when you're the only one who knows the truth.
I wasn't going to let her die, not because I loved her, but because my integrity was worth more than her destruction. And besides, death was too easy an escape for Alexis Sterling. She needed to be alive to see the empire she built on lies turn into dust.
Internal paddles, I commanded.
Marcus handed the tiny $10,000 specialized paddles through the port. I positioned them directly on her heart muscle through the robotic interface.
Clear, I said.
A jolt of electricity hit her. The monitor jumped, but then went flat again. Again. Increase to 20 joules.
Clear! Thump.
The monitor stayed silent for 3 agonizing seconds. Then, beep, beep, beep. The rhythm returned, a slow, steady sinus rhythm. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. Pressure is stabilizing, the anesthesiologist said, wiping sweat from his forehead. 100/60. She's back.
Good, I said, my voice returning to that ice-cold gray rock tone. Let's finish the repair. We've got a lot of work to do if she's going to be ready for the red wedding next week. For the next 3 hours, I moved with a precision that showed everyone in that room why I was the highest-paid surgeon in the wing. I repaired the valve, cleared the blockage she didn't even know she had, and closed the tiny incisions with a plastic surgery-grade suture that would leave a scar no bigger than a freckle. When I finally pulled my face away from the console, my neck was stiff and my eyes were burning. I just saved the life of the person who hated me most in this world. I stood up and watched the team prepare to move her to the $5,000 night recovery suite. I looked at the trash bin near the door, filled with the $4,000 worth of disposable surgical supplies we'd used just for her. I walked over to the scrub sink and let the cool water run over my wrists. Dr. Thorne walked up behind me. "That was a hell of a save, Maya," he said, his voice low. "Most people would have folded under that pressure, especially with it being, family." "She's not family when she's on that table, Marcus," I said, grabbing a $2 paper towel to dry my hands. "She's just a broken engine, and I'm the mechanic." "So what now?" Marcus asked. "She's going to be out for at least 12 hours. Brenda's still in the waiting room, probably halfway through her 3rd bottle of free hospital espresso." "Now," I said, a slow, predatory smile creeping onto my face, "we move to phase 4. I have a public event to attend next Thursday, the Atlanta Luxury Expo. Alexis was supposed to be the keynote speaker for the Influencer and Real Estate panel. She's not going to be doing any speaking in a week, Maya," Marcus laughed. "She'll be lucky if she can walk to the bathroom." "Oh, she'll be there," I said. "I'm going to make sure she has the best mobile recovery unit money can buy. I'm going to pay $50,000 for a private medical transport and a nursing team to get her to that stage, because I want her to be sitting right there in the front row when I take the microphone."
You're gonna speak?
I'm the mystery investor who bought the expo's main sponsor, Marcus. I didn't just buy the boutique building, I bought the stage. I walked out of the OR and headed toward the changing rooms. I had a $2 million penthouse waiting for me and a $300 bottle of champagne that I didn't have to share with anyone. He thought he'd won because he'd survived the surgery, but he forgot one small thing. The surgery was the only thing keeping him alive long enough to watch me take everything else. Now, y'all won't believe the look on Alexis's face when she finally opened those eyes. It was about 4 in the morning, and the VIP recovery suite was quiet, save for the hum of the $12,000 life support monitors. I wasn't in my $185 scrubs anymore. I'd gone home, showered, and changed into a $12,000 ivory tweed Chanel suit with gold buttons that caught the dim light of the room. I was sitting in a $3,500 leather armchair, sipping a coffee that cost $8.50, watching her wake up to a world that didn't belong to her anymore. Alexis blinked, her eyes unfocused from the $500 dose of anesthesia still swimming in her system. She looked around the room, taking in the granite floors and the $500 silk sheets she was lying on. For a second, she probably thought she was in a luxury hotel. Then she saw the IV lines and the bandage on her chest.
And then she saw me.
Maya, she croaked, her voice sounding like she'd been swallowing sandpaper. She tried to reach for the water glass on the $2,000 bedside table, but her hand was shaking too much. I didn't move. I didn't help her. I just stayed a gray rock, watching her struggle. The surgery was a success, Alexis. I fixed your heart. It's the only part of you that's actually working right now. She winced, the memory of the pre-op reveal finally hitting her through the fog. You're the doctor. How? Mom said you were a dropout. She told everyone at Sunday dinner that you were living on food stamps in Baltimore. Brenda tells a lot of lies to keep the golden child feeling special, I said, leaning back and crossing my legs. My $48,200 Patek Philippe watch glinted on my wrist. But the math never quite worked out, did it? You really thought a hospital tech could pay for $3,500 dinners and $500 a week nursing care for Big Mama? Alexis's eyes narrowed, the entitlement returning even through the pain. I don't care what you are. You're still my sister. You saved me because you had to, and now you're going to help me. Mom said the bank froze the accounts. You need to call them. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you're the chief of surgery and that I have the money. I don't think you understand the situation, Alexis, I said, picking up a $1,200 tablet from my lap. I'm not calling the bank to help you. I'm the one who told the bank to lock the doors. You did what? She shrieked, then clutched her chest as the pain flared. You're trying to ruin me. Everything I've built. My brand. The boutique. The boutique you haven't paid rent on in 2 months? I asked. The brand built on $200 fake jewelry and stolen identity? Honey, bless your heart, you didn't build an empire, you built a house of cards, and I'm the one who just turned on the fan. I tapped the screen on the tablet and turned it toward her. The high-definition video started playing. It was the footage from Big Mama's house. Alexis watched in silence as her own image appeared on the screen, sitting at Big Mama's mahogany table, carefully forging my signature on the quitclaim deed. The audio was crystal clear. You could hear Brenda in the background talking about how Sister Sheila's nephew would stamp anything for $500 and a plate of short ribs. This is a felony, Alexis, I said, my voice as calm as a Sunday morning. It's called forgery. And since you tried to use that deed to secure a $250,000 loan, It's also bank fraud. I've already sent a copy of this to the district attorney. They're very interested in Sister Sheila's nephew, too. Alexis's face went from pale to a sickly shade of green. Maya, please, it was Mom's idea. She said we needed the money for the family. She said you wouldn't mind because you didn't need the house anyway. Oh, it gets better, I said, scrolling to the next file. I also ran a full audit on the insurance policy you've been using. You've been using my medical ID for 2 years. You've racked up $42,894.12 in fraudulent claims. The insurance company has already opened a criminal investigation. Since I'm the victim of the identity theft, I had to sign a sworn statement. I didn't hesitate. You're going to put your own sister in jail? Alexis whispered, her lip trembling. I'm not putting you anywhere, I said, standing up. The Chanel suit felt like armor. Your choices are putting you there. I'm just providing the receipts. You thought you could shred my life 10 years ago and I'd just stay under your feet like a rug. But the thing about rugs, Alexis, is that eventually someone picks them up and shakes out all the dirt. I walked over to the window and looked out at the hospital parking lot. I could see Brenda's white Mercedes-Benz, the one with the past-due par note, idling near the entrance. She was probably waiting for family day to start so she could come up here and start demanding more things. The police will be here at 8 o'clock, I said, not turning around. They're going to wait until the doctors clear you for transport. Given how well I fixed your heart, that should be in about 48 hours. You'll be moving from this $5,000 a night suite to a cell that doesn't have silk sheets. Maya, don't do this, Alexis sobbed, the sound muffled by her oxygen mask. Think about Mom. Think about Big Mama. This will kill them. Big Mama is already safe, I said. I moved her to a private estate in North Georgia yesterday, a place that costs $15,000 a month, which I happily pay. She has 24-hour care and a garden that looks just like the one she had at the Cascade House. And as for Mom, well, she's about to find out what it's like to live on the struggling tech budget she thought I had. I picked up my $1,200 designer bag and headed for the door. I didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. For 10 years, I'd been the failure, the scapegoat, and the burden. I'd watched them eat steak while they told me to be grateful for the crumbs. I stopped at the door and looked back one last time. Alexis was clutching her $50,000 heart, crying into her $500 silk pillow. She looked exactly like what she was, a thief who'd run out of pockets to pick. Oh, and Alexis, I added, a small smirk touching my lips. The red wedding reveal I mentioned, it's not just for the bank. I've invited the local news to the Atlanta Luxury Expo on Thursday. I'm the keynote speaker now. I'm going to talk about financial integrity in the influencer age. I'm even going to show a few clips of your process. It's going to be viral. Isn't that what you always wanted? To be famous? I didn't wait for her to answer. I walked out of the room, the heavy door clicking shut behind me. Now, y'all, I know you think it's over, but Brenda was still downstairs, and she had one more trick up her sleeve. She didn't know the police were coming. She thought she still had one more flying monkey to send after me, someone from my past I hadn't seen in a decade. He thought he'd won because he had the family's secrets, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who owns the vault. Now, y'all, 8 o'clock rolled around exactly like I said it would. The morning sun was hitting the glass of the north side VIP wing, making everything look peaceful and expensive. But inside, the air was thick with the kind of tension you only feel when a lie is about to get its breath knocked out of it. I was standing by the nurse's station, sipping on a $4.50 espresso, watching the elevator doors. I'd traded my Chanel suit for a fresh set of $185 custom navy scrubs. I wanted Brenda to see me as the professional she claimed I'd never be. The elevator pinged, and out stepped the circus. Brenda was leading the pack, wearing a $575 Sunday best suit in a shade of yellow that was loud enough to wake the dead. Behind her was a small delegation from Elizabeth Baptist, 3 of the flying monkeys who had spent years whispering about my failures over potluck dinners. They were all carrying $10 bouquets of grocery store flowers, looking like they were ready to hold a prayer vigil for the golden child. "Maya!" Brenda barked as soon as she saw me. She didn't even lower her voice for the $5,000 a night quiet zone. "Where is the chief? I've been calling your phone all night. We need to sign the papers for the private recovery villa. Alexis says she can't heal in this room. She says the view isn't on brand for her recovery selfies." I didn't blink. I just set my coffee down on the $2,000 marble counter. "Alexis isn't going to a villa, Mom, and she's definitely not taking any selfies today." "Don't you start with that negative energy," one of the church ladies, Sister Patterson, chimed in. She was clutching a $200 designer-inspired purse like it was the Holy Grail. "We are here to lift up the successful daughter." Brenda told us all about the insurance glitch. "We're actually taking up a collection at Sunday dinner next week to help cover the costs since you've been so unhelpful." I looked at them, the $300 hats, the fake rich arrogance, the total lack of awareness. The math wasn't mathing for their little charity drive. "The collection won't be necessary," I said, my voice as steady as a heart monitor, "and neither will the villa." Just then, 2 men in dark 3-piece suits, each easily costing $1,500, walked through the security doors. They weren't doctors. They had that heavy government walk that makes everyone in the room stop talking. Behind them were 2 uniformed Atlanta PD officers, their duty belts jingling with equipment that cost the taxpayers at least $5,000 per officer. Brenda's eyes went wide. She immediately tried to pivot to VIP victim mode. "Oh, thank goodness," Brenda cried, rushing toward the officers. "Are you here about the investigative hold on our accounts? I told the bank there was a mistake. My daughter is a victim of a cyber hack. Someone has been messing with her $300,000 credit line." The lead detective, a man with a face like a stone wall, didn't even look at her. He looked at me. I nodded once. "Mrs. Brenda Sterling?" the detective asked. "That's me," she said, smoothing her yellow suit. "I'm the mother. My daughter is the one in the recovery suite. She's very famous. I assume you're here to clear this all up?" "Ma'am," the detective said, pulling a set of $200 high-grade steel handcuffs from his belt, "you are under arrest for forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit bank fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The silence that hit that hallway was louder than any of Brenda's screams. Sister Patterson dropped her flowers. $10 worth of carnations scattered across the $200,000 marble floor like a funeral. "What?" Brenda shrieked, her voice cracking. "This is a mistake! Maya, tell them who I am!" "I've already told them, Mom," I said, staying in my gray rock zone. "I told them about the $142,658.12 you took from Big Mama's savings. I told them about the $300,000 home equity line you secured by forging my signature. I even showed them the video of you and Alexis doing it in Big Mama's kitchen." Brenda's face went from yellow to a ghostly, sickly gray. The flying monkeys backed away from her like she was on fire. They didn't want any part of a 6-figure felony. You You snitched? Brenda whispered, her eyes filling with a very real, non-performative terror. I protected my family, I said. Something you forgot to do 10 years ago when you let Alexis shred my life. The officers stepped forward. They didn't care about her $500 suit. They grabbed her arms and snapped the cuffs shut. The click-click sound echoed through the VIP wing. Brenda started to wail, that loud church pew cry that usually got her whatever she wanted. But today, it only brought the head of security and 2 more nurses. "Wait, my daughter!" Brenda yelled as they started leading her toward the elevators. "Alexis, she's innocent! She's a mogul!" "The officers are already in her room, ma'am," the detective said. "She's being served with her warrant as we speak. She'll be under guard until she's cleared for the infirmary." I watched them lead her away. I watched the squad from Elizabeth Baptist scramble to the elevators, not wanting to be seen with a woman in handcuffs. I stood there, a gray rock in a sea of crumbling lies. The detective stopped next to me. "We'll need you at the station later to sign the formal theft of identity affidavits, Dr. Sterling. The $2,400 monthly insurance premiums she was charging to your medical ID, that's a separate felony count for each month she did it." "I'll be there," I said. "I have a $325,000 surgery bill to settle first." He nodded and walked away. I turned and walked toward Alexis's room. Through the glass, I saw the second officer standing by her bed. Alexis was awake, her face twisted in a silent sob, looking at the legal papers sitting on her $500 silk sheets. She looked at me, her eyes begging for a gray rock to turn back into a sister. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. The heartbeat I'd restarted in the OR was now pounding with the reality of what she'd done. He thought he'd won because he had the golden child status, but he forgot one small thing. The gold was just a $5 spray tam, and it was finally starting to peel. I picked up my coffee and took a sip. It was cold, but the $5 million view from the window, it had never looked better.
Now, y'all, the day of the sentencing at the Fulton County Courthouse felt like a different kind of Sunday. We weren't at Elizabeth Baptist, but Brenda was still trying to act like she was sitting in the front pew, wearing a $300 suit she'd managed to hide from the repo man, and clutching a Bible like it was a get-out-of-jail-free card.
I was sitting in the front row, tucked away in the corner, wearing a $6,800 bespoke charcoal suit and carrying a $10,500 Hermes Birkin bag that I set casually on the floor. I didn't need to say a word. I was the gray rock in a room full of crumbling sandcastles. Alexis was sitting at the defense table, and let me tell you, the influencer look does not translate to a courtroom. She wasn't wearing her 40-inch install or her $500 Swarovski acrylics. She was in a plain, baggy orange jumpsuit that probably cost the state $3.50, and her natural hair was frizzing under the fluorescent lights. She looked small. She looked like the girl who'd shredded my dreams 10 years ago, only now there was no one left to lie for her. The math was finally catching up to them in a way they couldn't ignore. They'd spent their last $50,000 on a high-profile defense attorney who charged $750 an hour, but even he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else.
"Your Honor," the attorney said, trying to sound like he believed his own words, "my clients were simply caught up in the high-pressure world of Atlanta real estate. They intended to pay the money back. This is a family dispute that should have stayed at the Sunday dinner table, not in a criminal court."
The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd survived 3 decades of church board meetings, didn't even look up from the $300,000 home equity line of credit documents on her desk. "Mr. Davis," the judge said, her voice cutting through the room, "this isn't a family dispute. This is a systematic pillaging of a vulnerable elderly woman's life savings. It's a $142,658.12 theft from a grandmother. It's a $300,000 forgery against a sister who, ironically, was the only one actually paying the bills. Brenda stood up, her face turning that same shade of purple I saw at the restaurant. Now wait just a minute. Maya is a liar. She's always been jealous of Alexis. She's the one who set us up. She's the one who bought our house out from under us.
"Sit down, Mrs. Sterling," the judge barked, "or I'll have the bailiff seat you. Your daughter, Dr. Maya Sterling, has provided high-definition video evidence of you admitting to the forgery while eating a plate of short ribs. You were recorded committing a felony in the very house you were trying to steal."
The courtroom was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. The flying monkeys from the church were in the back rows, but they weren't whispering or nodding anymore. They were staring at their shoes. The brand was officially dead.
Alexis started to sob. Not the pretty, silent cry she practiced for her apology videos, but a loud, ugly, snotting mess.
"I'll start with you, Alexis," the judge continued. "For the charges of identity theft, insurance fraud, and bank fraud, I am sentencing you to 8 years in the Georgia Department of Corrections, followed by 10 years of probation. You will also be required to pay $525,000 in restitution to Dr. Sterling." 8 years. Alexis slumped into her chair like her bones had turned to water. 8 years of wearing $3 uniforms instead of $1,200 Chanel dresses.
"And as for you, Brenda," the judge said, looking directly at my mother, "for your role in the conspiracy and the exploitation of an elder, you are sentenced to 5 years in prison. You will also be barred from having any legal or financial control over your mother's estate for the rest of your natural life."
Brenda didn't scream this time. She just sank into her seat, her $300 suit looking cheap and wrinkled. The math was finally done. 5 years for Brenda, 8 years for Alexis, and a debt that would take them 3 lifetimes to pay back. As the bailiffs stepped forward to lead them away, Alexis turned and looked at me. Her eyes were full of a desperate, dying hope. "Maya, please tell them you'll help. Tell them we're family." I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I just picked up my $10,500 bag and stood up. "The math never mathing for you, Alexis," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But don't worry. I'll make sure Big Mama gets a nice card from you every Christmas. I'll even pay the 58 cents for the stamp." I walked out of that courtroom and into the bright Atlanta sun. I felt like I was finally breathing air that didn't have a lie attached to it. My driver was waiting in the $98,000 Range Rover, the engine humming like a satisfied cat. But as I pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed with a notification I didn't expect. It was a link to a new viral video titled "The Surgeon's Secret: The Real Story Behind the Sterling Empire." He thought he'd won because he'd gotten his revenge in court, but he forgot one small thing. There was still one person who hadn't spoken yet, and they were holding the biggest receipt of all. "Now y'all won't believe how quiet it is up here on this mountain. It's been exactly 3 months since I watched the bailiffs lead Brenda and Alexis out of that courtroom in handcuffs, and for the first time in my life, I can hear myself think." I'm sitting on the terrace of my new estate in North Georgia, a property that cost me $6,200,000. The house is all glass and steel, tucked away behind a gate that costs $12,000 a year just to maintain. I'm leaning back in a $3,800 outdoor lounge chair, watching the sunset over the Blue Ridge Mountains.
I've got a glass of vintage Krug champagne in my hand, a bottle that sent me back $2,500, and honey, it tastes like pure, unadulterated peace.
Down in the valley, in a separate, sun-drenched cottage on this same property, Big Mama is finally resting. I spent $850,000 renovating that guest house just for her. It has heated floors, a walk-in tub that cost $15,000, and a wraparound porch where she can sit and hum her church hymns without anyone screaming at her about brand deals or content. She's got a private nurse I pay $10,000 a month to make sure her blood pressure stays as low as my interest in Brenda's phone calls from the Lee Arundel State Prison. Speaking of Brenda, I got a letter from her last week. She's currently working in the prison laundry, earning about 25 cents an hour. She wanted to know if I could send her $500 for her commissary account so she could buy better quality soap. I didn't even open the envelope. I just ran it through the $300 industrial shredder in my home office. It felt poetic, y'all. The sound of that paper turning into confetti was the best Sunday dinner music I've heard in a decade. And Alexis? Well, the golden child is currently serving her 8-year sentence. Her boutique in the building I own, I had all her fake designer clothes and gold-plated racks cleared out and donated to a local shelter for women escaping domestic abuse. I sold the $500 Swarovski crystals from her vanity for scrap and used the money to buy new books for a local HBCU's pre-med program. The Mercedes-Benz she couldn't afford was repossessed 2 days after the trial. Last I heard, she's trying to influence her cellmates into giving her their dessert in exchange for hair braiding sessions. The math finally mathed, and she ended up with a 0. I took a slow sip of my champagne and adjusted my $48,200 Patek Philippe watch. It's funny how people think being a gray rock means you're weak. They think because you're quiet, because you don't brag, and because you're willing to do the work in the dark, that you don't have any teeth. But a rock doesn't have to bark to break your hand when you hit it. I spent 10 years being poor Maya. I spent 10 years being the dropout and the burden. I let them use me as a footstool while I was building a ladder they couldn't even see. And you know what the best part is? I saved her life. I used my $2,500 surgical loops and my $5 million robot to stitch her heart back together. I did my job with excellence because my character isn't tied to their cruelty. I saved her so she could be healthy enough to face every single day of that 8-year sentence. I stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace. The air up here is crisp, and it doesn't smell like hospital grime or Brenda's $275 church perfume. It smells like freedom. So to all my sisters out there watching this from London or Atlanta or New York, if you're the one being underestimated right now, listen to me. Keep building. Keep your mouth shut and your bank account growing. Let them laugh at your little job and your plain clothes, because one day you're going to be the one holding the receipts, and they're going to be the ones realize they can't afford the bill. Being the bigger person is okay, but being the smarter person is how you win the war. I'm not a tech, and I'm not a failure. I'm the chief of surgery, I'm a multi-millionaire, and I'm finally the owner of my own life. I set my empty glass down on the $2,000 marble side table and checked my phone. I have a surgery scheduled for tomorrow, a complicated case for a little girl whose family can't afford the bill. I'm doing it for free, because that's what real power looks like. It's not about what you can buy, it's about what you can give when you no longer have anything to prove. He thought he'd won because he shredded my dreams 10 years ago. But he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who learned how to weave a new dream out of the scraps. And as for that secret story video that's going viral, well, y'all won't believe who just signed a contract to tell the real story on a major streaming network for a 7-figure deal. But I'll tell you about that in the next video.